intros. They're always the most difficult thing to do, I swear. Hello, welcome back to my channel, and if you have no idea who I am, hello, nice to meet you. I am Lou, and I am transgender, and I have been on testosterone for 11 months now. Next month I will be 12 months, meaning that I'll be a full year on testosterone. I'm pretty happy about it. And last night I posted on my Instagram story that I decided, okay, it's time to make an update video. And I decided to ask you all some questions, like if you guys had questions about my transition currently, and if you guys had, any questions based on that. But I didn't really get any questions involving my update, really. It was more questions guided towards like general questions about the transgender community or my perspectives on certain things, or just questions in general about myself. So I decided to make a whole separate video for one, my update video, and two, a Q&A. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's get to question 1. The first question that I got was very interesting and something I didn't expect to necessarily get. And it basically was, are the shots addictive? Which is an interesting question. A lot of people tend to believe or have this idea that taking testosterone is kind of like a drug, but it is not, because simply testosterone is a hormone, it's not a drug. And because of that, I can't really get addicted to it. I would say though that the first couple of months of being on testosterone, every Friday I take my shot, and during those first few months, when I would get to Friday, I'd be really excited, and I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to take my shot, and I would do it myself and all that sorts of stuff. And it wasn't necessarily that I was excited to take the shot, it was because I wasn't content with myself at that time. So I didn't feel comfortable in my body, I didn't feel comfortable outside or anything like that. So it was just a reminder to me that with every shot, it's me getting closer to being more happy with myself and being more me. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm addicted to taking testosterone and I'm addicted to taking this hormone and it makes me feel good and all this sort of stuff. It's not necessarily that. It's like if someone were to take antidepressants, it's needed. It is needed for these people. And it's something that is for my own well-being and my own happiness and comfortability in life. So it's not necessarily like a drug. And even now, to this day, when Friday comes along, it is now almost like dreadful. Not that I don't like taking my testosterone shots, but it's just come to the point that it's a routine, and it's just like this reminder to me that I'm not a normal cis male that naturally produces testosterone. I have to do this in order to be more comfortable with myself and more of a man, I guess to say, and like the eyes of society for the rest of my life. And I even know some trans people who actually dread taking it so much that they skip their shots, and that's not healthy. But overall, in summary, taking shots is not addictive because hormones aren't drugs, and there's nothing really addictive about it. It's for my well-being and for my own happiness. To be blunt, I'm not trying to sound mean, but it's just straightforward. That's the answer. What would you say to trans men who struggle with dysphoria? I made a video about this. It was more directed towards pre-T trans men and how to like cope with your dysphoria. But I will say it here again, and maybe as an overall general, not just for pre-T, but even for people like me, maybe you're a couple months on T or years on T, just having trust in your transition regardless of where you are medically or mentally, just knowing that, reminding yourself of who you are. You know you. Maybe other people don't see that, but you know you, and that's what matters. At the end of the day, when you go to bed, you're gonna know that you are who you are, and that always helped me. I know there were some people in my life who would tell me that, oh, by the end of the day, when you go to bed, you're gonna know that you're a woman because you have the parts to, be a woman or whatever. But I always, would push against that and say, in my head, like, no, like, I know who I am in my eyes, and maybe not in your eyes, but in my view and in my true identity, I know who I am when I go to bed, which is I'm a man. And just that reminder of yourself, that reassurance within you is what is gonna really push you and keep you going. I know it's hard, but to push away what other people say about you or what they see, or even in everyday things, someone calls you her or she, or misgenders you on accident, just reassuring yourself, okay, well, I know who I am, and that's what matters. So yeah. Why are you so greasy? Because I'm a grilled cheese. It has multiple questions in it, so I will answer each question individually. So the first question that they ask is, when did you first realize that you were really Lou? Whenever I get that question, it's always hard to answer for some reason, because I've always known, but I didn't know that there was such a thing as being, transgender. I've always been Lou, and even my dad and my parents to this day are like, oh, I didn't realize it when you were smaller, but you were always Lou. Like, there was this kind of fakeness, the facade, I guess to say, and this uncertainty and this unknowingness within myself that I didn't know for so long who I really was. And growing up, I always knew that there was something different for me, along with, like, in comparison to other people. Everyone was so connected with themselves and knew who they were. They knew that this is how it's supposed to be, and for me, internally, I always questioned it, and I had a lot going on when I was growing up, so it was just so hard to piece everything. I had so many questions in the world, and every kid does when they grow up, but I had so much going on that it was hard to, like, figure out everything. And I think I knew, like, when I realized who I was when it was around puberty, was when I realized something was different in me, but I shoved it away and I suppressed it, and then I tried to dress the opposite of what I felt and be the opposite of what I felt inside. And I had this little phase of where I was just so feminine, and I wanted to deny who I was for so long, and that was around 7th grade, and it only lasted for a year, might I add. That suppression lasted, and then 8th grade hit. I was in denial for a little bit, and then I just couldn't deny it anymore, and I started to kind of experiment in it and dress a little bit more masculine, and change my name and go by a different name and go by different pronouns, and I never felt more comfortable. It also felt so reassuring and so right. And I'd say that I knew who I was for as long as I've lived, but I didn't, like, Lou has always been there, but I didn't know who I really was until maybe 6th grade and fully understand me and what it means to be me in 8th grade. So the second part of the question is that they say, I see that your immediate family is supportive, but how are your other relatives? So I have 2 different homes. I have my dad's home and my mom's home. And my mom has a boyfriend and my dad has a girlfriend. And his girlfriend has 2 kids, so that makes it that I have 2 stepbrothers and then I have 1 actual, like, blood related brother. And all of them are very supportive of me. But when it comes to family outside of that group, I don't see them that often, if I be honest. I don't see my dad's side of the family often, and I don't see my mom's side of the family often. Not because we don't want to see each other, but it's just how it is, you know? My mom's side has always been, never actually struggled with it. I do know that some of them had a difficult time accepting it, and letting go of what they thought I was, but they also understood that this was something that was going to be for me and make me happy and content and comfortable in life, and this is me, and that's what they knew, you know, and they love me. Grandparents, on the other hand, my grandma died last year, and she wasn't necessarily accepting of a lot of things because of her religion, but towards the ending of her life, I think she knew. And it was almost kind of like a don't ask sort of thing. And if she didn't know, I'm sure that she would have loved me anyway. And it's not like we had a close relationship either, though. I never really had grandparents growing up. On my dad's side of the family, I was always afraid to come out to them, because I was afraid that they wouldn't agree with who I was, whether it me being in love with the same gender or being a completely different gender from the one I was born with. And because of that fear, I never really came out to them. My dad actually told them about me being transgender, you know. I have heard that they blamed it on certain things that aren't necessarily at all reasons why I'm the way I am. To this day, I'm sure some of them aren't necessarily accepting of it, but they respect it, and that's what I want. It doesn't matter if they're accepting of it. It doesn't matter if they're like fully on board with it. That's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking for them just to respect me, and I'm sure a lot of them love me for me, and that's what matters, you know. They love me for me. And my cousins have always, none of them really had an issue with it. It was more so my uncles and my aunts that I was more afraid of. And I say right now, they love me, and they support me, and they're not, I don't think, on board with it, but they respect it, and that's all that really matters. So I'd say my whole family as a whole, even though I see them very little, they respect me, and that's what matters. And the third part to that question, which is the final part, is, has life changed in any unexpected way for you? In regard to, I'm not sure, because there's a lot of things that have changed in my life with certain parts of my transition. In regard to me just being trans, yes, immensely. Like, coming out as transgender had changed everything in my life. In some in positive ways and some in negative ways. I'd say the most positive ways that, okay, well, I at least know who I am, and I know why I'm feeling these certain things, and It's okay to feel those things, you know. Now, on the negative side, I'd say just knowing that a lot of people aren't gonna understand it, the life that I have, and I have, experienced that. In high school, my partner and I went through a really rough time where their parents didn't understand me and us, and especially that I was transgender. They didn't accept it for a long time, and it caused so much pain in both of us, and it was difficult for a long time. But in relationship wise, it's difficult. It's changed that. It's changed my way of living. It's changed my way of dressing, the way I act, the way I talk, my family life, my friend life, even my college life. It's different. It's changed it. If I was a normal cis female or cis male, it would be so much different, everything would be different. But it is what it is, and it's okay. And at this point now, I'm pretty happy and content with my life. So growing up, though, it was difficult. Now, in terms of, has my life changed since starting testosterone, I'd say, oh my god, yes. I have never felt so much happier in my body and in myself, but it has been so much better. My dysphoria is gone. It's still there. I still get it. I know that regardless of what I do after surgeries, after being on T for 11 months, I'm always gonna have dysphoria regardless of what I do, and that's okay. But I'm doing everything in my ability to alleviate that, and having starting T has changed that so much, and I'm so much happier than what I was last year. Last year, I don't even remember who I was. It's insane. So I'd say my life has drastically changed because of me being transgender and my transition and everything as a whole. My life is changed, and it's got goods and it's got bads, and that's life. So yeah. I had also got, which is not a question, but I'm gonna take it anyway, and it's basically this. Which, cool, I guess. I have no idea what question I'm on by now, but this question says, would you get upset if someone used offensive words to describe you? It truly depends on the person, and it truly depends on the words. If it were a really close friend and they were to call me certain words that are offensive, I wouldn't get offended. Now, if it were a stranger, or even someone that I barely met, or maybe someone that's not so close to me as a friend or a family member, and they were to use offensive words to describe me, I'd probably get a little iffy on it. There's certain words that I can't get past by, and then there's certain words that I don't mind hearing if it comes from a certain person. I know that certain offensive words shouldn't be used at all. What do you think about the phrase trender? I don't like using it personally. I think it's kind of childish, if that makes sense, to use, but I don't disagree with it necessarily either. Now, would I use it? No. Because I do know that I wouldn't categorize trenders as, people who are trying to do trend setting and stuff like that. I'd say they're more so just misinformed and a little confused about who they may be, or their identity or sexuality, etc. And there's a lot of misinformation that's been going around lately, in my opinion. Like, for example, I know that there's a lot of people who believe that you do not need gender dysphoria to be transgender. And in my opinion, I fully believe, and this is my opinion, so please do not take offense to this or take me as like word for word or anything like that. Everything I'm saying right now is just in my view, in my perspective, and there's nothing against anyone. So please don't get offended by it or anything like that. I'm just sharing my own perspective. And if I'm wrong, please be my guest to educate me a little bit, or share your thoughts and stuff like that. Maybe I'll change my way of thinking. But I fully believe that in order to be transgender, you have to have gender dysphoria, whether it be physical dysphoria or social dysphoria, and that's just what it is. And I think a lot of people get being transgender and being gender non-conforming confused. Because, for example, and I mean, I believe that, non-binary people are valid, trans women are valid, trans men are valid. Those are valid. And anything else that kind of is along the lines of those things, I believe that those are valid. But when it comes to, let's say, for example, there is a woman who, was born a woman, they align with the gender that they were assigned at birth, and they're content and happy with it, but they don't want to present themselves in the box that society has given them, which is very much like, you have to like pink, you have to like this, and that, and these feminine things, and these attributes, and whatever. So instead, they dress a little bit more, masculine in the eyes of society, or they present themselves a little bit more manly, or manly traits, etc., stuff like that. This is society believes to view it as, but they still completely connect with the gender that they were assigned at with birth, so they don't have dysphoria. That would just mean that you are gender non-conforming. Unfortunately, sometimes those people get it confused and believe that, because I'm gender non-conforming and because I feel more comfortable with being in masculine clothes, but I still connect with the gender I'm assigned at birth with, that must mean that I'm transgender. Like, I don't agree with that. And those people, often are portrayed as trenders by many people, but I don't want to consider them trenders. I would consider them just a little bit misinformed and a little confused with who they are. And I do believe that they're just misinformed, and they should be a little bit more informed about what it is to be transgender and what isn't. And instead of just straightforwardly saying I'm transgender without really figuring themselves out. Yeah, that was all the questions that I got. I hope that this was somewhat interesting and fun and informative. Yeah. Anyway, bye. Thanks for watching, and see you guys later.